Okay, you're on, Sammy.
Hi everyone. My name is Sammy Ramon and this is VP Wedding Planner Live Hangout Q&A. Each week I share tips and tricks with you guys to help make planning your wedding a piece of cake. And this week's topic is let them eat cake and other deliciousness. So we're going to be talking about food, y'all. I'm so excited. And before we get too far into that, I want to remind everybody that you need to post your questions. I know you have them. I talk to brides all day, every day, and they tell me that they have loads of questions and they're always nervous to first get the conversation started. But the really cool thing is you can actually post your questions right below this video and I'm going to answer them after our hangout. So I also want to hear from you guys. I want to know what kind of topics you all want us to cover each week. So please share that with us. Okay, are you guys ready? Here we go. I'm a big foodie, so I'm really excited about this. I'm not going to lie. We're first going to start with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, or appetizers and drinks. Either one works, honestly. So first thing you're going to want to know is whether you have it in your budget to serve people twice, because that's basically what you're doing. You're going to be serving food twice. The other thing is it feasible within your timeline? So if you have a really tight timeline and you're going literally from point A to point B in a matter of a couple of seconds and you're immediately going to serve dinner, there's really no point to have any appetizers, I promise. But if you have a little lag time, like for example, your wedding begins at 4:30, most ceremonies will go anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So what you probably could do is actually go ahead and have some apps for your guests to munch on in between. Most of the time, what I've seen, at least with my brides, is they have their ceremony, it goes by within an hour, and then they have pictures right afterwards, and that takes about an hour's worth of time. Some of my brides are going to go from the ceremony site to the venue, or they literally just go into the next room for their reception. But if you have people that are traveling, it might be nice for them as soon as they arrive to the venue to have a few different things for them to sample, hors d'oeuvres and appetizers, or mise en bouche, if you call it. What you can do is also have drinks available for them. You can even do that at the ceremony if you're having it at the same venue. That's also a really cool option for your guests. But I'm having a little something for them to munch on, just as time lapses, so they're not having to wait on you, and that transition goes over a little bit smoother than it would if they were just sitting there waiting for dinner to start. You don't have to break the bank, honestly, to have appetizers at your event. You can do something as easy and as delicious as having a fruit tray or having a vegetable tray. That's a really nice option to have for them. Or those little pinwheel sandwiches, or you can get Jason's Deli to come in and cater that, of course, if the venue allows for that. And have, like I said, little pinwheels or some little sandwich for them to munch on. I've coordinated events where the bride was a big foodie like me, and she loved hamburgers and fries. So she had many sliders and little cones of fries for people to sample. And they also had drinks available. We're getting to my other favorite part, is the whole drink option and having a bar at your event. Whether you decide to do this or not, it's just a really nice thing to have. If you have sodas available or tea, if it's a non-alcoholic bar, just having those different options. Punch for the kids, that's a really nice touch. The other thing that you can do is, if you do have a bar, is you can offer up some maybe specialty cocktails. So something that you and your spouse came up, or future spouse, excuse me, came up with together, and you can make some really cool names or titles for the drinks, and something neat and special again for your guests to sample as they're waiting for you guys. If you're worried about your budget, you can always do a selective bar. You can do a cash bar, or you can have just maybe beer and wine as an option. Or I've again coordinated an event where they didn't necessarily have an open bar. It was a cash bar later on in the evening, but they had 2 bottles of wine on the table, one red and one white, and their guests were able to sample those. And then they had beer as an option for their guests. So there's a lot of different things that you can do as far as the bar. My favorite is always going to be that specialty cocktail that I mentioned. I've attended events where that was specifically what they had at the bar, and that was that was it. They didn't have any other options, which then, of course, helped them on their budget because they're not having to worry about supplying all those different alcohols and then having all the different mixers. That starts to add up after a while. So having some different alcoholic beverages, specialty cocktails for your guests is a really, again, a nice touch. And I know that they're going to enjoy it. They're not going to be wishing that they had, that other cranberry and vodka drink or the rum and Coke kind of drink. They're really going to enjoy those drinks that have the cool names behind them and that mean something special to you guys. And you can sit down and work with your caterer and your vendor on that. Which, by the way, when you are going to be talking about food, you should do all of this 11 months out. Secure all of those things 11 months out. That's going to be on the checklist, too, for VP Wedding Planner. You want to get all of this stuff ahead of time. So make sure that you have that. And then you finalize everything 3 months out. So you can go back and look at your menu and make sure that you have everything in order. And this is what's really fun. And not all venues will do this. Not all catering companies will do this. So I'm not saying to select the ones that do, but it is nice when they have those tastings, especially when they are free tastings. Take advantage of that. Ask ahead of time if they offer the free tasting. If they don't, it costs a little bit, then you want to set aside some money in your budget just to do that. But if they have those tastings, that's always fun to bring maybe your maid of honor, course, bring the groom along with you and another family member to kind of help you decide on what items you're going to want to use for either your appetizers or for your main course. Speaking of main course, the dinner bell has rung. We're going to talk about the main course right now. My friends and I always joke about the next event that we go to, what's going to be on the menu, chicken or chicken. And you know, chicken is a wonderful option, and there's nothing wrong with choosing that whatsoever. What is a really neat trick and something to ask your caterer is if they do provide a chicken meal, it's going to be cost effective for you. One, you do save a little bit of money instead of having a beef option, so that's nice to know. But if they do have a chicken option, ask them if they're willing to keep the bone in the chicken. I say this as an expert. Again, I'm a foodie, because it actually keeps the tender, or the breast tender, the chicken breast, that is. And it nice and juicy, it's tasty, it's probably the best thing you're going to have. And if they have that option, go for it. It might not be what you envisioned, it might not be as appealing to look at, but I promise you it'll work out in the end. It's going to be something so delicious that your guests are going to talk about for a while. So yes, bone in the chicken. Please remember that. The next thing is there's different things that you can do as far as the main course, providing, you know, either doing a buffet, doing a plated meal, doing food stations, or something that's really cool and we're going to talk about a little bit later is actually doing family style dinner. But first, again, we go back to our timeline. If your time allows for it, then a food station or a buffet or even family style might be the route that you need to go. If you have a lot of time at your venue and you have time in between your ceremony and getting to your reception site, then I would definitely suggest that you go that route. If you have a limited amount of time, if your venue only allows you for a few hours at that location, then you might want to consider a plated meal. The reason I say that is because you can kind of time that out a little bit better. You know when your guests are going to arrive and when you're going to arrive. Around about the same time as far as timeline goes. And you know, you can immediately start to serve people and they can come in and serve tables and go from one table to the next. All of their caterers, or not the caterers, excuse me, their team's going to be there to kind of help serve and get all of that out in a timely fashion. And that means that your guests are going to be eating around the same time. And so they're going to finish around the same time. That means you can go to the next event that's popping up on your timeline, which might be the father-daughter dance or the bridal bouquet toss or whatever it is. So if you have a strict timeline, I would suggest, again, plated meal. If not, then go for the buffet and go for the food station, especially food stations. Last week, we talked about using your 5 senses to make the most memorable event for you and your guests. I say food stations because, again, it's going to take your guest's eye from one area to the next. It's also going to be very, very appealing to their tummies because they're going to walk around, they're going to look at the different things that you have to offer, and they might go and sample a few things from here, a few things from there. Some of them will sample from every single one of those stations that you provide. And that's what it's there for. It's, again, really visually appealing, and it's going to be something scrumptious for their bellies. Buffet, same thing. I know people are a little bit worried about buffet, and they think sometimes that they're going to be saving more money, might be spending more money. It honestly just depends on what you decide to serve your guests that day. Pastas or anything that's considered Mexican food, that's going to be a little bit lower on the cost level for you. Anything that's going to require a cream sauce or additional vegetables, that is going to be a little bit more expensive, or a different cut of meat, that's going to be a little bit more expensive. And then again, you have people that are coming up in that line. It's going to sometimes be a long line. So again, another suggestion could be that you have a buffet line or you set up your tables right in the center, and you have 2 lines that form on either side. That's actually a really, really simple way to cut having all of those people bottleneck in certain areas where you're not able to pass through, and it becomes a big cluster. You don't want that. It doesn't look good. So to have it available to where the guests can come on either side of the table and either pick their items that they want, or the other thing is you can have someone that is there to help serve at the buffet. So your guests are not overindulging, and you're not having to spend extra money on all of the food that would be consumed that evening. So there's an option right there. The other thing I mentioned was actually family style. Family style dinners are the neatest trend right now. If you have tables that are rectangular and you have a bunch of friends coming in and sitting down, or family that are sitting down with you, what's really, really neat is to have that family style dinner. What it's going to do is help kind of get the conversation going and make everybody feel comfortable. If you're anything like my family, what they do is they set down platters of food, and everybody has the same the same platters on their table, and they're able to try all the different foods that they have there, but they're actually passing it from one person to the next. So again, it opens conversation. Like, my family likes to try things as it's being passed, which I don't recommend that they do, but it's just fun for the whole family, and it makes a really neat environment. It makes you feel relaxed, and it makes you feel like you're at home. So that's a really cool option to do. The last thing that we're going to be discussing, or second to last thing, excuse me, is going to be cake. Cake. I love cake. Cake is my fun option. Cake, of course, you don't have to do cake. I mentioned last week I had some brides that have done ice cream, that have done cupcakes, that have done cake pops, and have gone that route. If you do decide to do cake, there's a few things that you guys can do to save money. I know most brides are envisioning their cake being this 4-tier, 5-tier, 6-tier cake, but they don't necessarily have the budget for that, and that's okay. Here's a trick. And this is actually something that I learned from one of the local bakers here. You can have all of those tiers. Now, you might not feed everybody that you want with all those tiers, or you might have too much. So this is what they've done in the past to get that full effect, where you've had the different tiers and all the beautiful flowers around it. They actually have 2 faux tiers, maybe even 3 faux tiers, where they just cover some plastic, or they cover some foam with fondant or with icing, and it looks just like the rest of the cake. Nobody would know that it's actually faux cake. It's not cake whatsoever. And just a few tiers, and they'll let you know which tiers are real cake you cut into. Then you can actually purchase large sheet cakes and have them pre-cut. Your guests are not going to know that it's not coming from that cake right there. It's coming from the same baker. It's going to have the same taste to it. And again, it cuts down on price tremendously. I've also seen some brides just do the 2 layers of cake, and then they have the sheet cake available for their guests, and they pre-cut everything. So that was something really neat for them to have for their guests. Again, it cuts down on pricing. So that's something, if you really want to save money, if you have a tight budget, and a tight schedule, pre-cut everything and have it all ready to go so everybody can hand that out, whether it's your day of coordinator that's helping out with that aspect of it, or you have family members that are helping pass the cake out, or if you have the catering company that's there to help and assist with that. It makes very, very easy. What you can also do ahead of time, and I tell you guys, don't procrastinate. And I have to, again, I remind myself of these things too. Do your research. I Googled just the other day, cake cuttings and how much actually feeds, how many people, and the sizing and the different shapes. And they had a whole outlet of it, or a whole transcript of it that actually had the different pictures, the different models, and how many is going to feed what, and how you can cut into round cakes. So it was extremely helpful. You guys can do the same thing. And that way, when you're going in and talking to someone about cakes, they're not giving the weird look like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. You actually go in there knowing what you want, what is it that you need, and the style of cake that you want. And they're probably going to be a little realistic with you, and you're going to be prepared for that because you already know, because you listened to our talk earlier. So you have that option there with the cakes. Last thing, guys. So if you have leftovers, and again, might be a conversation that you have ahead of time, because I know of some venues that allow this and some that don't. If you have leftovers at your event, you might be able to take some of that home with you and share that with your family later on. But honestly, there's not a lot of brides that have the time to think about that or have the time to do that. If you give that task to another family friend or your day of coordinator, that's fine. But what you can do is ahead of time discuss with the venue whether or not you would like to donate your food to an organization that's in need. And there are plenty here in South Texas, lots of nonprofits that would take those donations in gladly. They'd be very happy to have that. So think about that. If you have extra food left over, and again, if the venue allows it, because some venues don't, it can be a conflict of interest and an insurance violation sometimes. But if you talk to them and let them know what it is that you're trying to do, and also consult with the nonprofits that would be receiving the items ahead of time, you might be able to maneuver that. That way there's not any waste involved in your event, and you are actually getting your money's worth. Speaking of waste, really cool story I want to share with you guys before we get to all of our fun questions, because I know we have a bunch. We have some left over from last week that we weren't able to get to, and there was a few people that chimed in this week. So really neat thing that I saw, and I actually posted it on my Facebook page, our business page, which is Bellicosa Event Planning, but it was a zero waste wedding. There was a bride and groom that decided to do a zero waste wedding, and what they did was they used all local products. They decided to make their own invitations, and they went as far as actually creating the paper themselves, and they used a window screen to do that in their bathroom. Now, I don't know if I could do that at all. I wish I was that creative. I might try it out in the future just to say that I could do it. But if you can, go for it. They made the most beautiful invitations. They had actual flowers that they laid into the paper. It dried out. They wrote on the paper itself in calligraphy. They used fresh farm products from their local farmers market. They, for decorations, used things that they could find around their house. I saw some really pretty cleaned and washed large wine bottles, and they put flowers in there. They borrowed items from their friends and family members. And then with the wedding party just wore dresses that they had that were similar to the colors that the bride had for her color scheme. And they had the most beautiful wedding, and they didn't spend a whole lot of money. So I promise you, you can have your dream wedding and make it happen on the smallest of budgets. And you can also have it on the largest of budget. But, it just depends on how you plan it, and getting, everything ahead of time, and using the checklist that we have provided for you guys for the VP Wedding Planner, using that budget calculator. I can't say that enough. I know I say it every single Hangout, but I'm going to just nail it into your heads because it is so important to have those tools to use. If I had had those tools ahead of time when I was planning other events, heck, it would have went so much smoother than it already did. But it is nice to have things like that. It's basically your own assistant. It's there when, if you can't afford a wedding planner like myself, or if you can't afford a day of coordinator, that tool is there to help just navigate everything that you're going to need and help you stay on track. That's the best thing, because I know that every bride here gets overwhelmed with the thought of planning their own wedding. And then, of course, you have other people that might be chiming in and offering some helpful suggestions. But then again, it does get a little overwhelming when you're hearing from everybody. So use those tools. They're there for that reason. Okay, are you guys ready? I know we got a couple of questions. I have them right here. So first question says, my fiance wants open bar. Is there any way to make open bar not so expensive and a free-for-all booze fest? That is a very good question. So I mentioned earlier in the Hangout having some specialty cocktails. Again, that's just something that I think has a nice touch to the wedding. It becomes a little bit more personal, but I don't know if I really mentioned a whole bunch how much it helps you save money. Because if you have limited cocktails there, specialty cocktails, the bartenders or the catering company is actually bringing only so many items. So you're not having to pay for all those different drinks that your guests might potentially be drinking and all those different mixers. So if they have limited amount of things that are coming in, then those are the only items that they're going to choose from. The other thing is to be very vocal to this catering company or to the bar that you're using that, we want to keep an eye on our guests and make sure that they're not overindulging. Number one, we want them to be safe when they're going home. And number two, it does hit your budget a little bit when you have an open bar. So making sure that they're keeping an eye on these things. I know some of them might consider this affecting their tips. So what I want you guys to do is in your budget a little bit, to budget some money, a tip to give all your vendors really, but to give the bartender at the end of the night, just in case they don't end up tipping them a whole bunch. And I know they're working hard that night. Everybody does, working really, really hard to help make your event special. Have a little tip set aside so they don't feel so bad about telling someone, we have to cut you off because you've had a little too much. But also they're looking out for you and your budget. So I hope that answers your question. You see, next question. Are wedding favors a must? Will anybody notice if I don't have favors? What are some inexpensive but not too cheesy favor ideas? Okay, very good question. So with wedding favors, no, they're not a must. They really aren't. It's just a nice gesture to say thank you for actually coming to my event, coming to my wedding, celebrating in this special day with my spouse and I. And we appreciate the gift, the nice gift that you gave us. You don't have to do it though. But if you do decide to, there's some kind of inexpensive ways to go about doing this. One thing that I mentioned last week was actually, and again, it's part of the 5 senses and having different elements and things for people to look at, is having a candy buffet. Candy buffet is just a really neat aspect to your wedding. It draws a lot of attention, mostly children's, but you wouldn't believe how many adults actually react to a candy buffet when they see all the different candies. They all of a sudden go back into their childhood, and they love it. And this can actually be the favor that you give away. If you have little bags that maybe have a personalized stamp on there that has y'all's wedding date, has y'all's initials on there, your new initials, that's something that they can take home with them, and that can be a favor. Other things that I've seen and that are really popular are going to be koozies. I've seen some people get shot glasses and actually get them printed on, and if you buy them in bulk, then they're anywhere from, I've seen 22 cents to, a little expensive, 55 cents a piece. So if you're having, several people attend your event, you might not want to buy that many, but it tends to be less expensive if you go that route. Another thing, the way to anybody's heart, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, it's with food, really. What I've done in the past for thank yous is actually gotten one of my favorite friends to bake her world famous cookies. And she's known for these cookies. They're so delicious. And we made a personalized stamp that said thank you, and a few other little things just regarding the event. And we stuff those cookies inside those bags. We had a big, party beforehand, and we had glasses of wine out, and we were stuffing bags the night before. And that's what we handed out as favors for all of our guests. And that can be really inexpensive, instead of having to go, purchase these massive favors for your guests that, are monogrammed and, have all the bells and whistles. You can go about it that way. You can also go to your local farmer's market, and there's specialty jams and things that people make. That's always a big hit. I've seen that work out really, really well at different events. That can be a little pricey. It just depends on how much and what you're buying. So a couple options. I hope that helps out a little bit. The next question. What are some things I can get my fiance to do that aren't so girly? How can I get him engaged in the wedding planning? Oh, okay. Well, again, I said the way to everybody's heart is through food, men especially. And one of the neat things that I've always done is I've tried to incorporate the grooms into the whole tasting. So again, if there's a tasting that's available through your catering company or through the venue, I would definitely include them in that so they feel like they have some input into what's being served at the event. Mind you, their opinion might be a little bit different from yours, and that's okay. That's not a problem. But it's nice to have them there just to lend their expertise on the menu. The other thing is give them some task lists. Give them a task of, I need you guys to help get the DJ. I need you to make sure that we have the rehearsal dinner at this certain place. Give them a call. Men tend to do well with lists, and I say that from experience. When you hand them a task list, something they can check off, they tend to do a little bit better with that than if you just tell them to do something randomly, because they're going to forget. They're like you and I, where we're busy. We have other things going on outside of the wedding. So if you want them to get involved, those are a few different things that I would definitely recommend. And picking the DJ, I promise you, is not girly, and trying the food isn't. And the big thing is the bar. So if there's a bar option or there's a different vendor that you're using for the bar, talk to your spouse or your future spouse about the bar and see if they're willing to help book that, and just simply book it at that point. And then you guys can talk whether or not you want, champagne toast, if you want to do a keg, if you want to have margaritas available, if you want to have beer and wine, if you want to do the specialty cocktails. But I think having them involved in any of the food or drink is definitely a good way to get them involved in the wedding process. And again, I hope that helps out some more. If you have any more questions about that, send them my way. And we have 2 more questions. And I believe her name is Nive. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, Nive. Okay. Is it ever too soon to start shopping for a dress? When do you recommend starting? I think it's never too soon. But actually, you probably want to do this anywhere from 10 to 9 months out. VP Wedding Planner Checklist recommends that you do this 9 months out. I say no more than 10 months because your body is going to change a whole lot during that time. And instead of having to get multiple fittings and having multiple alterations, which can cost a lot of money, you probably want to just stick with the 9 months, and that way when your dress comes in, you're able to do your fitting and do alterations if you need it. Then you do your second fitting, and you should be done with it right then and there. But again, if you go a little too far out, you never know what can happen. You might gain a whole bunch of weight because you're stressed out. It happens. It's not a big deal. You have some time to lose the weight. Don't stress out from that. But I've seen that happen a few times with some brides, and so that leaves them flustered if they're not going to fit in their dress properly and things like that. So I want you guys to avoid that completely. Try as hard as you can to fit, or to do the 9 months out instead of going further out than that. Let's see. Her next question and last question. Can you recommend any DJs? Yes, I can. We have a few DJs that I've worked with in South Texas that I absolutely love. One I know is someone that's very, very popular, and he's not always available because he is that popular in South Texas. But when I was not able to actually get this DJ, I ended up going with, it's Blue Moon Entertainment, and they did a spectacular job. I had I have family all over the United States. Most of my family is in Texas, but I have family in California, and I have my New York relatives. And my New York relatives are the loudest, most boisterous people in the whole wide world, and they're the best people you'll ever meet, I swear. And they were celebrating their anniversary here in Texas because that's where they originally met. My Aunt Maria is from South Texas, and so she met her husband here when he was stationed here, my Uncle John Riley. and they wanted to renew their vows here and have a big anniversary. So all of the Rileys came down, and I didn't want to entrust them to anybody else but a specific DJ. And like I said, he wasn't available, and that was okay. I kind of figured that was going to happen, and I was told Blue Moon Entertainment was actually one of the other better DJs in South Texas. And so I got a chance to talk with them, and I let my family know that they were the #1 people to choose. And I am telling you right now from personal experience, they were amazing. They were so great to work with. We had a great experience. My family loved them. They are very picky individuals. I will say that. Sorry, family, I'm being honest. But they absolutely loved working with them, and I can't recommend them enough. So Blue Moon Entertainment. And they work a lot with VP Wedding Planner and with the One Bride Guide. So I hope that helps out a little bit. So that is the end of all of our questions for this week. I'm so glad that we got to hang out, everybody. Again, if you have any other questions that you want to post, please let me know. You can message me later on. I'm here to help you guys, and so are Mike and Monica. I heard that they got to meet with you all, some of you all earlier in the week, so that's fantastic. I hope you guys will continue to utilize VP Wedding Planner and the checklist and the budget calculator. And of course, every Thursday at 7 p.m., I'm here to talk to you all about tips and tricks to help make planning your wedding a piece of cake. So I'll see you guys next week, everyone. Bye.